We should have left a small force, relatively small force. As much as I didn't want to be there, we should have left a small force. And really, ISIS just evolved out of all of the turmoil, all of the weakness, all of the stupidity of decisions from Hillary Clinton, from Barack Obama. And ISIS started off in a small area, and now I read the other day they're in 28 different states or nations.
Donald Trump speaking in Virginia at a Veterans Town Hall, the campaign event hosted by General Michael Flynn. And Mr. Trump addressed a large range of issues in that town hall, including questions concerning Russia, ISIS, as you heard right there, and China. Now, a key endorsement for Mr. Trump came earlier today when he received the official nod, if you will, from almost 90 retired generals and military flag officers. In an open letter, they urge their fellow military veterans to support Donald Trump's campaign for the White House. Let's talk more about those developments and the international scene with the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Pete Hoekstra. Pete is now a Shillman Senior Fellow at the Investigative Project on Terrorism. He is also the author of the book, Architects of Disaster, The Destruction of Libya. And likewise from Newsmax Washington tonight, retired U.S. Army Colonel Patrick Murray. Patrick saw service time in Iraq, in Russia, and at the United Nations. And Patrick is also the author of the book, Government is the Problem. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. And Colonel, we'll start with you as we listen to what Mr. Trump had to say about what happened with ISIS and Iraq. You know, there was some concern that Mr. Trump was not all in our initial involvement in Iraq. Why do you believe close to 90 flag officers and generals are now backing Mr. Trump in this election?
Well, thanks for having me on, JD. Look, this is a powerful endorsement. These are almost 90 Americans who dedicated their life to the service of their country. They are patriots. And the reason they support Trump is because he's committed to rebuilding our military, the readiness of which is cratered under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, as well as destroying ISIS and securing our borders and restoring law and order here in the United States. And so that's why they're behind him. And I believe if you look at the polls of active duty and retired military members, veterans, Trump is outstripping Hillary by a huge number. And the reason for that is we know what we need to do to provide for the common defense. We know who can do it as commander-in-chief, and that's Trump. And we know who cannot, and that's Hillary.
Retired Army Brigadier General Remo Butler spoke with Fox News earlier today about his reasons for supporting Mr. Trump. Let's look and listen to what the general had to say.
I know many of the military people who are working with him as advisors. These people are what I call warriors and leaders. They're not politicians. They're warriors and leaders. I believe that Donald Trump will take the advice of these warriors and leaders and do what's right for our country and support our troops no matter what the endeavor.
Pete Hoekstra, for purposes of full disclosure, you are someone who has sat down as part of Donald Trump's national security team. When you take a look at the, quote, warriors and leaders, and you add nearly 90 flag officers and generals, what does this mean both in terms of politics and policy?
Well, I think the most important thing here is what does it mean in policy? It means, what we're going to see is this is a president this will be a president, Donald Trump, who sees that we're at war with ISIS, whether we want this war or not. Radical jihadists have declared war against the United States and the West, and they've done that for an extended period of time. Donald Trump is going to look for military leaders who can give him the advice, and I know what his objective is. His objective is to win. It's not, just to kind of contain it or whatever. He wants to defeat this evil that threatens us. And so he's going to follow. That's the plan that he's going to look for, and he's going to implement it. And the third thing is he recognizes that over the last 8 years, we've been losing this war. In 2008, 2009, there were roughly 3,000 people per year who were losing their lives as a result of attacks by radical jihadist groups on a global basis. 7.5 years later, that number has grown to 30,000 people per year being killed by these jihadists. We've got 5 major countries that are failed states that threaten Europe. You've got Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, and Afghanistan. And the threat is spreading throughout Africa, throughout Asia, and threatening parts of Europe. So you put all that together, we're at war, we want to win, and we have a losing strategy. That's why they're supporting Donald Trump.
Winners and losers not only occur overseas, gentlemen, obviously they occur within Washington, D.C. and across the river over at the Pentagon. In fact, there's a story developing now about a leaked Pentagon memo revealing how the Department of Defense would outline its strategies to oppose annual defense policy and spending bills. House Speaker Paul Ryan told the publication The Hill, quote, "For this administration, it's always politics first, even at the Pentagon." Colonel, let me go to you. Obviously, our military is there to salute and implement what our elected commander-in-chief says to do. But with your contacts at the Pentagon, what is the level of frustration there? Or is there a cadre of officers who've become yes men to the Obama administration?
Well, let's be clear. These are political appointees who wrote this memo, JD, and they went total Saul Alinsky on just not talk. It's not a matter of let's discuss the issue. Maybe we can work something out with this budget. It comes down to $8 billion that the House Republicans wanted for overseas contingency operations, a little something we've got going on called the war on ISIS. Thank you very much. And the Obama administration is very clear. They're not going to increase any military budgets unless we have a commensurate increase in domestic budgets. But the fact of the matter is, JD, what is the primary responsibility of the federal government? It's to provide for the common defense. And so this is one of those reasons, just to go right back to the 88 general officers, retired general officers who are endorsing Mr. Trump. This is a perfect example of why that is. Because we are less safe now than we were 8 years ago. The world is much more problematic than it was 8 years ago, particularly in the Middle East. The Obama administration has no energy to do anything about it. And Hillary is, we all know, she's the third term of Barack Obama.
Well, let us go to the telephones now at 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629, to my old Arizona stomping grounds, out to Chandler. That's where we find Kathy tonight. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, JD. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you, ma'am.
There's a few things. I don't know if I have time to mention.
Well,
all.
pick the first big thing, and let's go with that, Kathy.
I called about Hillary's reaction today when she was coughing. And she said every time she says Donald Trump's name, she's coughing. I just like to know what she's going to do when she gets on stage and debates with him.
That will be worth watching, I believe, Kathy, and we appreciate the point you're making. Pete Hoekstra, you were a freshman in Congress the year that Bill and Hillary moved into the White House. And of course, with great fanfare, it was supposed to be Hillary Care. As a first-term congressman back then, with the conduct of Mrs. Clinton, have you seen any appreciable change in the intervening 2 decades?
No, we really haven't, JD. You and when we went through that in '93, '94, Hillary was a very arrogant approach. It's my way or the highway. The rules be barred. This is what we want. This is what we want to accomplish. Going back to talking about how she worked at the State Department and what's going on at the Pentagon. What's happened to those civil servants who are there to uphold the law and have some type of consistency? They don't have a loyalty to the administration. administration. They have a loyalty to the rule of law. They kept their mouths shut as Hillary Clinton flaunted one law after another at the State Department, one rule and regulation at the State Department after another. She violated. They said nothing. It's much of what we saw when they came into the White House, whether it was Hillary Care, whether it was Travelgate, a whole series of scandals. They just said, we're going to do this come hell or high water. We don't care what the process is. This is what we want, and we're going to make it happen. She's doing exactly today. She did what she used to do, what she did at the State Department, and what she did when she got to the White House.
One final note, Colonel, just a very quick question. Give me 20 seconds on the G20 summit and President Obama. Apparently, it's been billed in the press as he was going eye to eye with Putin. Is anything going to come out of that?
Well, Putin is the preeminent leader in the world today. And that comes in the vacuum of the Obama administration. I mean, they're flying air sorties out of Iran, for goodness sakes, over to Syria. They've got huge military deals going with the Middle East. Netanyahu's trying to negotiate a deal so they can have.
Yeah, in fact, we're hearing that Netanyahu may end up in Moscow trying to negotiate a deal. Perish the thought. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. Our time is up right now. Back with John Zogby and more.